Start again. What's up, everybody? My name is Daniel Unmanageable, and this is Hard Knox Talks. We have another landmark episode tonight. Tonight is the very first title-sponsored episode, and our title sponsor this evening is Prairie Sky Recovery Center. Thank you so much. This episode of Hard Knox Talks is also fiercely supported by Double T Ranch. Oh, it didn't work. God damn it. This Hard Knox Talks episode is fiercely supported by Double T Ranch. There it is. We'll get better. Next time I'll be on cue. The Newly Institute and Chrism Prairies. Tonight's guest, Jacqueline Hoffman, is the CEO of Prairie Sky Recovery Center. She is also a CBC Future 40 winner and an RBC Woman Entrepreneur nominee. She has a hell of a story, and we are going to hear it right after this. All the sideways things happened already. We'll be good from here on out.
I spent 23 years living in addiction. 16 of those years I worked as a Red Seal tradesperson in Saskatchewan and Northern Alberta. During that time, I made many mistakes and took more than a few hard knocks. I went from tradesman to business owner to hiding from gang members and dumpster diving. But with that lived experience, I've decided to try and make a change. I've dedicated my life to raising awareness and promoting change in the fields of substance use and psychological health and safety. So join me and my guests as we take off the blinders around mental health in our communities and at work and shine a light on what's working and what's not working in the fields of mental health and occupational health and safety. I'm Daniel Unmanageable, and I'll be your host, and this is Hard Knox Talks.
Oh, look who it is. It's Double T Ranch. Oh, why didn't it work? God damn it. We'll get there. We'll get there, you guys. Okay. Where is Jacqueline? Let's bring her in. What's up, Jacqueline? How are you?
I'm good, Dan. How are you?
I'm doing well. Welcome to the struggle.
Thank you.
Yeah. Last week, I was talking with Al Kaler. He was a guest, and we were talking about honoring the struggle and how it just appears that my whole project is just like a metaphor for that, unfurling before our eyes. So, are you ready to go into the flashback?
I am.
Let's do it. So, why don't you start? How did you come to where you are? Like, what was it like growing up? Tell us all the things.
Well, a lot of people came to know PSR or Leipzig Serenity Retreat through my mother, Ardith. So I was raised by my mother. I was 6 years old when she sobered up, and her sobriety was kind of the main theme of our lives and of my childhood, really. And at the end of the day, I wouldn't be sitting here today if it wasn't a decision that she had made all those years ago to end her struggle with addiction and to enter a life of recovery.
Mm-hmm. Was there a lot of alcoholism in your family outside of your mother?
Absolutely. We had, like, our family was rife with addiction. A lot of her siblings were drinking and using quite a bit. And I think that was one of her things, was that she had seen so many people, in her inner circle, but also in her family, really just struggle with addiction. So her being the only one that sobered up was actually quite a bit of drama for our family.
Yeah. Was there violence?
Yeah, there was suicide attempts, and and quite a bit of violence in the background. It was not in my home because I was insulated from that. And I'm very grateful that even at an early age, she was able to insulate me from that, but definitely in our extended family.
Yeah. So your mother was pretty upfront with you about addiction and alcoholism and all the things, correct?
Absolutely. She was very upfront about it. She didn't hide any of it. I mean, it was really important to her that she was able to attend meetings and that she was able to have like the program members around us all the time. Like she included them in a lot of our family activities. And so, for me, I didn't necessarily understand that it was a bad thing. I always had people in recovery around us. And so for her to be upfront with me meant that when there was somebody in our family that was drinking, have Christmas or Thanksgiving, that was when she'd load me up in the car and she'd say, they're drinking. We don't need to be around this. Let's go home. And so she didn't hide that they were drinking. She never said to me, oh, I'm tired. She didn't make excuses for anybody. And I think that was really important because when there's something big happening in the household, I mean, kids know. They know that there's something wrong. They know something's off. So there's no point in hiding it. And I think that was really important to me, that she didn't edit that. She didn't filter that. She was saying, they're drinking. They're not good to be around. Let's go home.
Mm-hmm. So you told me a little while ago that your mother described you as the broken link in the cycle in your family. Would you agree with that?
I think so. Like, I think that obviously, like most teenagers, I tried things and I didn't necessarily, I didn't have to hide that from her, that, I experimented as a teenager.
I can see you
like a bloodhound. I mean,
I can see you, like, we talked about this, and like,
sorry.
you're not in the middle. You're not, and I can see that you can see that, and you're going, it's backwards.
Yeah. Yes.
So anyways, that's
sorry.
why I'm laughing, not because of what you're saying. So anyways, please continue.
No, for sure. Well, it's true though. It is pretty funny. My mom had a nose like a bloodhound. There was no hiding any of that from her. Mm-hmm. And I think that the big thing for her was that by educating me about the disease and by explaining to me that slippery slope that people go down, that she was able to, that education saved me, I think, in a lot of ways from making mistakes that I could have if I hadn't known the impacts of hard use of drugs and alcohol. And when people offered me hard drugs, I mean, people get offered all the time, especially high school. After high school, I traveled to Australia. That was obviously kind of lots of opportunity that would come up. And I said, no, thanks. I just didn't want to go down that road. I'd seen the impact of it my whole life and just wasn't for me.
So your mother instilled the importance of service in you. That's pretty obvious. Tell us how PASR came to be.
Well, she always wanted to help people. I mean, that was the main theme of my mom's service work, was what was going to keep her sober, and she was very open about that. And so through explaining to us and teaching us and fostering kind of the desire to be of service to other people, she also just really it was important to her that we understood that no matter what walk of life people were on, that they were going to that they deserved respect and dignity. And part of that too was that she interacted with so many different people, through her time in like the rooms of AA, but also our uncle was on the streets in BC. And she was just like, listen, guys, like, this is somebody's brother. This is somebody's daughter. This is somebody's dad. And so being in Edmonton as a young person, we would go downtown and she would just make a point of showing us that kindness goes a long way. So through her desire to help people, and this being instilled in us at a very early age, we oftentimes had extra people at supper or Thanksgiving or Christmas. There was always somebody staying with her or somebody that she might have picked up just to share the meal with us. And so it was just commonplace in our family that, that this service work was happening and that we should join in and be a part of it. And humility and grace was just something that she modeled for us. So not just words, but things that she showed us through her acts, of kindness.
So, sorry, go ahead.
So I was just going to say that it's because of that heart that she started what was called Leipzig Serenity Retreat.
Right.
So she wanted to continue to help people. And she was living in this little town called Bashaw, Alberta. And they had, it was her husband and a friend of theirs living together. And they were all programs. And she was finding that a lot of people that she encountered were waiting for treatment beds. And so, her spare room would end up being used by somebody who was waiting for treatment. Or then the basement got developed and they put a couple people in the basement. And then sometimes there's somebody sleeping on the couch. And so it kind of got to the point where they were like, we need a bigger house. And that is when they started looking on the MLS and they found the building that we're now housed in.
Yeah. And it was clear, like we talked about aftercare too. How many years ago was this that your mother started on this journey and realized the importance of aftercare?
Well, and pre-treatment too, right? There's people who are just waiting in the sidelines, and they're lost just in that lineup, right? So yeah, the pre and post treatment was something that she recognized, and I'm going to say honestly, probably 20 years ago. And in Alberta, it's, there might be more services in terms of addictions beds, but they're just as behind as anybody else really when it comes to the tsunami of addiction. So even in Alberta, there's people with treatment, especially publicly funded.
Yeah. And was it a challenge getting started? Like once you got the building, like let's hear about that.
So. Yeah, so it is actually it's quite by the grace of God that she even got the building, because they had sold their house and they had put in an offer on the building and got a mortgage lined up. There was a bit of a gap between taking ownership of the building and selling their house. So they moved all of their belongings into a sea can, and they got a phone call probably about a week before possession of the building, and it was the bank. And the bank said, actually we've reassessed and we've decided to pull the mortgage for the building. It's not developed enough. There's not enough, square footage that's livable. So therefore it's a bad investment. We're not giving you the mortgage. So this phone call actually came to her while she was at work. She was actually working at an addiction service in Alberta. And so she was quite upset. So she went outside to have a cigarette and just kind of have a cry, because her dream was coming to an end and she didn't have a house. They were kind of living in limbo. And so she was having a cigarette, and somebody came up to her that she had helped before, through their struggle with sobriety, and said, what's the matter, Ardith? And so she told them, I just lost the mortgage. I'm not gonna be able to open this building. And she kind of explained to him what she wanted to do with the building, which at the time was like pre and post treatment services. And he got up and kind of walked away, and she was like, oh, I guess the conversation's over. And I guess, so she kind of dried her eyes, and he had actually gone to his car and got his checkbook, and he wrote her a check for the building, and he carried the mortgage personally for 5 years. So I always hear this. Sure.
So you can keep talking, but we'll just flash through some pictures.
For sure. So I think that one of the things that one of our counselors says, Donna always says, when you walk the path the Creator meant for you, things will fall into place. And this is actually that exact thing. She was meant to have the building. She was meant to do what she's doing with them. So, for somebody to just get up and write her a check, I mean, to me, that's your higher power at work for sure.
So what did she do? She got the check. What was the next thing?
Oh, I think like 16 loads to the dump, and then constant painting and scraping and sweeping and mopping. And it took them forever. I think the first 6 months was dedicated just to getting, the building cleaned out enough. There was only a couple of rooms. And of course, being the true AA member that she is, she just kind of took it one day, one room at a time. Mm-hmm. But people started showing up early on because people had heard what she was doing. And she was such a huge part of the AA network, the underground AA network that exists,
The Underground Railroad.
everybody knew. That's right. Everybody knew that she had gone to Saskatchewan to kind of start something, and they started sending people to her right away. And so they knew, I think after, the first couple people arrived, that they actually needed something more than just kind of impromptu counseling, informal counseling. And so they started basically like a 12-step study for the people who were coming in, and they started to really start to see more and more people. And as the people started to come and the room started to get developed, that's really when they started to develop a thorough program that kept people busy most of the day. They hired counselors. My cousin Bruce, actually, who was 18 years sober at the time, he came from British Columbia, and they developed a program based on the 12 steps, as well as I think it was probably 2 or 3 years in, they developed a program called Emotional Health and Wellness. And that program is still in use today. Both of them are. The emotional health and wellness, I think, is really what sets us apart as a center, because we all know, like, it's not just about the act of addiction. It's about the underlying mental health and emotional health issues that people have, that they just use, drugs and alcohol to cope, right? Mm-hmm. So, for them to recognize that early on and to develop something to address that was impressive. And that's really where to have more and more clients come, because word of mouth started to spread.
So how old were you when you decided to go to work for your mom?
I think that I was honestly probably, I think I was about 29 when she bought the building, and I was 31 when I went to work for her. And I just wanted to be a part of it. I didn't know what that looked like. I didn't know what I was going to do. Every time I visited her, the magic that is the building kind of overtook me, and I saw her just run off her feet. The phone was just ringing. And so I just phoned her one day and I said, "Mom, I want to come work for you. What do you need me to do?" And so she doesn't believe in nepotism. So she set me to, cooking meals and scrubbing toilets. And that's really where I got my start at Prairie Sky. Which was good, because I didn't know what I would need, So I'm glad that I started out in those departments.
So when did you realize you were stepping into your calling? Did you realize this right away, or did it creep in over time, or?
No, I had no idea that I would end up in this position. Certainly not right off the bat. I mean, there's something really fantastic about the building that calls people to it, as we need. People show up and they have something to contribute. And for me, caretaking the building, being part of the renovations, and just making best use of the space was something that really was what I felt was my calling. But I didn't know it at the time, but she was grooming me to take over for her. And I remember saying to her, when she had the first initial conversation with me about taking over for her, I said, "Mom, I don't have a business degree. I don't know how to do this." And she said, "Yeah, you do." She's like, you have the right. You just got to help people. Everything else will fall into place. And so when it came time to me stepping into that role, I really just had to have faith that that would happen for us.
Yeah. And how did you step into the role?
It wasn't the best situation. My mom, I was living in Calgary at the time. I had taken a bit of a leave of absence for about a year. And I got this phone call from my father that he was chasing the ambulance. My mom had been taken from the building. They thought she'd had a stroke, and they had no idea what was going on. And it was devastating. I had no idea what was happening. So I threw my kids in the car and went flying, to Saskatchewan from Calgary. My sister as well, we met up in the ICU at the University Hospital in Saskatoon. And, she was there for 12 days. And the second day, the doctor, he said to me, "I heard your mother has a business." And I said, "Yeah, she does." And he said, "Well, whatever it is that she she does, she's not going to be able to return to that. So whatever plan B is, you'd better put it in effect. Mm-hmm. And I just stood there and I was like, oh, shit, I'm plan B. And it was heartbreaking because I didn't, I didn't have her in that moment to say, it's okay, kid, you're going to do okay. Like, you got to do this. So I drove back to the building and, the next day, and I met with all the staff and I just said, you know what, guys, mom's not, like, she's okay. From what we knew, she was okay. Mm. But she's not coming back right away. So can you, just carry on, just keep going? Because at the time there was clients in the building and we were operating, right? So, we kept going. And then about, I think 4 months, she had had some rehabilitation work done. Mm-hmm. And then she came home and she just said to me, like, you're out there, you're doing okay. And I said, yeah, I'm okay, Mom. And she said, well, I'm probably not coming back. And she made the decision, by her 6th month that she was going to retire. Mm-hmm. So my ascension to being the CEO, not this wonderful promotion with a party and, a lot of fanfare. It was awful. It was, potentially losing more and my mother. And it was hard. It was a very hard lesson to learn, but I knew that I knew that she believed in me and that she knew otherwise she wouldn't have, named me as her successor. And so I thought, okay, I'm Artist's daughter and I just got to remember who the hell I am and step into her shoes and do the best I possibly can.
Yeah. So, how did you cope? What were some changes you made?
Well, I coped. I want to say I didn't cope because I started grinding my teeth and, doing all those things that come with stress. But I coped by leaning heavily on my family, who I know is watching tonight. So hi, guys. And leaning on my friends and my Auntie Charlene, who was my sister's mom. She was a huge cheerleader for me that first year. But I just rolled up my sleeves and I got to work. And some of the changes that I made, one of the biggest things for me being that I kind of represent the family members of the addicted, right? Because I'm the adult child of an alcoholic, was to develop the family care enhancement program. I thought we need something for the families. So we developed also a preparedness program because we have people coming in early. So we did the preparedness program, the family care enhancement, relapse prevention, anger management, sexual abuse, sexual trauma, parenting and recovery, like the list goes on and on. One of the things that I really wanted to do is bulk up our emotional health and wellness programs, our mental health programs, and, just make sure that we had a lot of different programs to offer people, on top of the 5-week program that she had developed.
Mm-hmm. So moving forward, I mean, how do you stay funded in a province that offers free treatment? I mean, you're an ABEX finalist. That doesn't come easy, Tell us about it.
How do we stay funded? Well,
no. Hang on. We're in a province that offers free treatment. We talked about this. We were going to talk about that.
That's what I'm going to say. That's right. No, yeah. And you know what? It's not free.
Yeah.
It's taxpayer funded.
Yeah.
It's taxpayer funded. And I try and tell people every time they get an opportunity, I pay for it, you pay for it, grandma pays for it. Mm-hmm. And it's still important.
And still we're waiting 4 to 6 weeks or longer.
Well, and I know that they, I don't want to get into any slanderous discussion because those programs are good. Don't get me wrong, but they're not when they are needed right off the hop, right? So, so how we stay going or operating in this province that does not have a lot of privatized services. In fact, we're the only inpatient program available privately in the province. So is that we're user pay. So clients pay for their stay. And, now we're starting to get into seeing employers pay for treatment, and insurance paying for treatment, and social services and things like that. I think because they're starting to see, and I think that the impetus for this was COVID. COVID, put a lot of pressure on a lot of people. And I think that they were starting to scramble a lot. And so they just said, okay, it's time to start paying for these services and what's out there. And that's when they discovered us. Mm-hmm. So go ahead.
No. Were you done? Yeah. So, okay. Well, you did mention employers there. I understand you advocate quite strongly for better accommodations and services for employers when it comes to return to work and things like that. Tell us about that.
I think it's really important. I've been speaking publicly. I've been invited to speak at the Saskatchewan Safety Council seminars and things like that. And I think that one of the biggest things for me is advocating within the employer realm, because this is one of the easiest and quickest ways for employees to get help, is for their employer to help them by not just accommodating them by, giving them short-term disability or laying them off, but by actually helping them, do that warm handoff, like, hey, my employee needs help, and start to find services for them. So, when they're looking at risk management and disability management, for them, the safest route would be to find a private center to do their inpatient program. Because when an employee goes through the provincial system, they're kind of lost. I mean, they've been laid off. They're now at home. They're using heavily because they're in crisis, and they have money now because they've got short-term disability to do that. And so they're waiting 8 to 12 weeks for treatment. Their employer is basically just hoping and praying that they're going to get through the door of someplace and come back to work at some point. What I've been trying to say to employers is that, hey, we can actually get the client into a treatment program and out before they would even hit the front steps of a provincially funded program. Like you could be back at work before that even happened. Mm-hmm. So I think it's important that the employers hear that they know that there are options for them, and also that they can see that, they can still be in contact with their employee during that time, rather than just hoping and praying that they're going to return to work at some point and that they're going to call them when they're ready to do that. So there's still some communication between the employer and the employee when they go through a private program, which I think is important, as well as us being able to make those recommendations for ongoing accommodation, right?
Yeah. Exactly.
So to me, it's just a win-win, especially in this province. I mean, we have, they're talking about youth retention all the time. How can we keep the youth of Saskatchewan here in the province so that they, they go to school, they get a trade, they pay into our tax base, they do all those wonderful things that they need young people to do. If they go out of province to a private center in Alberta or BC, now their recovery supports are in Alberta or BC, and they're probably coming home, right? Yeah. So it makes sense to me that we keep our youth here. As well as the fact that they don't have to go that far. They have resources here. This is where a lot of their family and friends are. So if they can enter into recovery and also be at home to do so, then they have all of those resources still, and they don't have to give it up and go in blind to a completely isolating situation.
Yeah. Yeah. So now correct me if I'm wrong, but when somebody fails a drug test at work, and they're like, is it common for the employer to have to keep paying them a wage while they're awaiting treatment?
I think that a lot of times what happens is they get laid off. They get not laid off, but they will sometimes access short-term disability while that happens. Oh, so then the government starts paying them more taxpayer dollars. The government, or also too, their insurance policies, right? Mm-hmm. So insurance policies are kind of a funny thing, and I've discovered this through a lot of the different trade shows that in conferences that actually you and I have both been to. Insurance is actually employer driven. So if enough employers say to Wawanesa or Great West Life, hey, my employees really need mental health services, my employees really need addiction services, then they start making those policies available to the employers. So it's really important that the employers are very open and honest with their insurance providers. And then thus we also need the employee open and honest with their employers so that their benefits cover it when they need it. So when they get laid off and or on short-term disability, because not every employer has short-term disability or long-term, and that does go to like a medical EI system, which again is provincially funded or federally funded. Basically they're kind of just spinning. They're spinning their wheels, and now they're at home, and it increases the rate of domestic violence. It increases the rate of exposure to the kids. It can be a really bad situation. They're accessing reactive services. So reactive being the emergency room. They're accessing the mental health wards. They're accessing sometimes shelters and things like that. That realistically, if they had just been able to access inpatient programs, we could have avoided all of that.
Well, and even when they're at home and they're waiting to go to treatment, even if they do want to see a counselor or they do want to see a psychiatrist to get some medication, I mean, what's the wait list on a psychiatrist right now in this town?
Brutal.
Like 18
it's brutal
months.
Because
so now they're at home. They can't work. They're on short-term disability. They can't access services. Even if they wanted to see a psychiatrist, even if they wanted to see a counselor, an addictions counselor or anything, they can't. So it makes a lot of sense.
And it was especially bad during COVID because the provincial government just kind of slammed shut all of those services. I know that they were trying to, I don't know, reduce the risk to everybody and stop transmission and all that stuff. But we're talking about isolating people who are already at risk and putting them into a completely barren area of no services at all. And here's a phone number.
The drug dealers answer the phone, I bet.
Exactly. But, unfortunately, a lot of the counselors, and I know that those counselors felt horrific and were upset that they had to kind of basically offload all of their clients because it took them forever to get those clients to come in anyway. So, it became a pretty tough time during COVID. And thank God we were still able to operate. I actually contacted the Ministry of Health and said, I want this in writing that I'm able to operate. And because I was a privately owned business, they said, you can continue to operate. You're an essential service, which I thought, okay, awesome. I'm an essential service, but why are your programs not up and running right now? It was so contradictory, but I'm grateful that they gave me the green light because we were open the whole time and still able to help people. Yeah.
So now, give us a rough idea. The people that come through your program, how many are currently employed when they show up at the doorstep?
Actually, we have a pretty high employment rate with our clients. So have you ever heard of the term recovery capital? This is recovery capital is the idea that people have resources in their lives that is like a capital for them. So they have employers, they've got family, they've got loved ones who are still willing to help them out. They have all of these assets essentially, right? Okay. So the idea that people have to hit rock bottom, they're starting to see now that people who are have early intervention have the same recovery as people who have hit rock bottom, because the people who are intervened on have a job, they still have their children, they might still have their home and their family, and they have resources, maybe even money in the bank. So, what we're seeing in our center is that a lot of the people who come through are still employed, gainfully employed, and they still are married and they still have access to their children, they still have access and family. And so when they get out, they're kind of being taken back in. I mean, sometimes they're going back into a bad situation, but oftentimes they're going into a good situation where they've got family who actually really want this for them. So I'm going to say probably 60% or more of our clients are employed.
So are you
seeing... And most of our clients are...
Go ahead.
Sorry, our demographic is, 30 to 50-year-olds. And so, and before it used to be mainly tradesmen, but now we're starting to see a lot more professionals coming through: nurses, teachers, accountants, a lot of business owners, and a large sector from the agricultural area too. So lots of farmers.
Are you seeing employers stepping up and just paying the bill?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I'll kind of paint you a picture of the employer. I mean, we have a lot of large employers who are paying the bill, but it really started out where it was like, let's say, for instance, somebody has a trucking company and they've got, 12 employees, and their lead guy is now, he's been going on a binge, and, he's, nowhere to be found. Those are the employers that I used to find were really invested in getting their employees in and out of treatment because they needed them, right? It was the small business owners who really rely on their employees to help them through their operational day-to-day, and that we're finding that, they just really couldn't afford to lose them. But now we're starting to see large employers too, CP Rail, Pepsi, like different things like that, right? Where they're like large,
screw it, we're paying it.
They're paying it. And I think that the important thing that people need to realize is that I know that a lot of people think that the employer-employee relationship is really one-sided. They don't see their employer as a resource. They just think that they are the resource for their employer, but that's not true. It should be a reciprocal relationship, really, right?
Absolutely,
I help you, you help me, right? Yeah. And it's not just that way in small companies. Like, when we see large walkouts, in factories, I mean, you can shut down millions of dollars a day in production, right? When somebody walks out on somebody, like on their job. So, I mean, at the end of the day, I think it's really important that the employer needs to hear you are the link to getting your employee help. You need to see them as the resource that they are, and you need to be a resource for your employees. Yeah. Because at the end of the day, healthy, happy employees are productive employees, and they're loyal. They're
taking care of your employees is an excellent risk management strategy.
Absolutely.
Like when it comes, especially when it comes to mental health and things like that. Like if you can keep your employees happy and your workforce content, they will be safer. They will be happier. They will, less likely to fall into mental health challenges.
Absolutely that. But if they know, for instance, that Joe in accounting went to treatment, mm-hmm. and they're struggling, they're going to make their way up to Joe and say, "How did you do it? How did you get better? I see you back at work. How did that work?" Right? Mm-hmm. So then Joe's able to say, "Well, actually, you need to go see, Joanne in HR, because mm-hmm. she's going to help you and she's going to get you connected to the right people." Those avenues are so important, because when people are in crisis, they just don't know where to turn. And there's so much shame and so much guilt with mental health and addictions. And like, honestly, it becomes isolating, and it becomes this huge barrier for people. They don't know who to turn to. They don't know who to trust. And they don't want, the last person on the planet that they want to know about this would be their employer. But oftentimes the employer knows that something's up. They've been missing days. They've been asking for payroll advances, things like that. Right. And so at the end of the day, it's in everybody's best interest for those policies to be loud and proud and put right out there. Hey, if you need help, I'm here to help you. And not only that, but maybe I'll pay for it, and you can start paying me back slowly off of your paychecks, so that it makes it completely accessible. Right. And I mean, some employers just pay for it. It's, they just write it off, and sometimes they just make it, like, take out a loan for the person, whatever the case might be. But I've seen it both ways. And let me tell you, those people who come through, who are employees and had their employer pay for it, they are so grateful. They are so grateful, and they work hard at it, and they see it for the opportunity that it is.
Mm-hmm. So, at what point do you come into the return to work strategy? So say there's an incident, there's a drug test, and there's a fail. Like, where do you come in there?
So typically, at that point, somebody within, like, there might be, a lot of employers have EAP programs. And so the employee assistance programs oftentimes will have who's kind of looking after these things. Other times it's just an HR woman, or honestly, sometimes it's just the employer themselves. They pick up the phone, they're looking for addiction services. Usually they end up phoning a 1-800 number, and then they're told, well, the employee has to call in because this is, person driven, or they need a referral. Then they have to get on, they have to go through this hoop jumping of getting onto a wait list. Yeah. If they're lucky, they know that there is such thing as private treatment. This is one of my biggest things. I want to just yell it from the rooftop. There is private addiction services. There is private here in Saskatchewan. You have options. So that's my thing, is getting out there and really pushing this knowledge or this education for the employers. So once they find out or decide, you know what, we're going to try and get this person treatment, which is usually the accommodation or usually the recommendation once they've discovered that they have a substance use disorder. And usually once they have a substance use disorder disclosure, there's some sort of assessment, either that a company where they do substance use assessments.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's, the EAP has some sort of assessment tool that they're going to use. And it's usually determined that inpatient programming is required. And then they start the researching what's available in this area. How quickly can we get them in? And that's when they call me and I say, hey, we don't have a wait list. We've never had a wait list.
You've never ever once had a wait list. How many beds you got?
Never once. I technically have 32 beds, but 24 of them are active. A couple beds that we always keep for employees. And then we also have a couple of detox emergency beds.
How many are normally empty?
I wish I could say no, but right now I have 11 clients in the building out of 24 beds.
How many people do you think are waiting for
are
treatment right now?
Tons. And they're dying. They're dying while they're waiting. Yeah. And that's one thing I think that as a province, when we're flashing, when they finally do decide to talk a little bit about addictions, they always like to use the fentanyl, the opiate, the methamphetamine tsunami, the idea that we are in this crisis, which we are. There is no doubt about it. We are in an absolute epidemic of addictions and overdosing that's happening in the province. One of the things that I don't ever see, they always flash these pictures of the lighthouse, downtown Saskatoon, or they show pictures of people in front of the Friendship Center, and they have, they have all of these people that are just kind of standing around outside. Mm-hmm. And, to be honest with you, people who are overdosing, oftentimes they're employed and they're in their basement in front of their TV. They're 30, 35-year-old guys. That's those people are overdosing too. It's not just the vulnerable population that we think it is that's accessing services, the harm reduction services, like the safe consumption sites. A lot of people who are overdosing, they're doing it in their own homes, in their bathrooms, friends' houses, Mm-hmm.
So, okay, well, unless you've got something else, I think we'll move into the viewer's voice. We can continue, we can continue talking and things like that, but we're going to look at a few comments here, all right?
Absolutely. Let's do that.
So, let's see here. We have Double T Ranch. They say, thank you for watching, you guys. What an amazing gift. I love the quote. If you walk the path your creator meant for you, things will fall into place. We have seen and felt this in our journey through recovery and into building the business, which is our passion. What else do we got here? Oh, and we've got one more from Double T. The wait list is heartbreaking when we see friends and family ready for the change, but no space is available. Well, there is space available. Just saying. Anything to say to that?
Yeah, I say get on the horn and let your MLA, your MP, your health minister know that, we're happy to rent a couple of our beds to the provincial government if they want them.
Mm-hmm. We've got Krissa chiming in. Thank you, Krissa, for the comment. Oh, wait, this was maybe this was time sensitive. Not everyone is covered with their own insurance, or they don't want to deal with it.
That's a good point. So this is why I'm saying it's really important for employers to advocate for mental health and addiction services within their plans. Because when I was starting to run insurance agencies and things like that, I was saying, like, how come you guys don't cover more of the cost of addiction services or mental health, like counseling and things like that? Because a lot of people have like $500 worth of psychological services. If you're seeing a counselor, $500 does not last very long, right? Mm-hmm. So it's really important that the employers actually say, I need more coverage on our policies, right? And also too, it's true that they're not all covered, right? So that's why we're hoping that the employers will actually understand the benefit of picking up the bill for this, to make it accessible right away. Going through insurance is a time, especially during a time sensitive situation like requiring treatment, can be disheartening. It can be heartbreaking. It's so much runaround because it's an insurance company. Mm-hmm. So oftentimes if they are coming in through insurance, it's like after the fact they're getting reimbursed. And oftentimes, like, you know, if the employer has an EAP program, then usually the EAP program is the one who's kind of getting that approval for them right off the hop. So it can be definitely time sensitive. So I can see the point of that for sure.
Yeah. We've got Claudia chiming in. Thanks for watching, Claudia. Claudia says, with the employee pool shrinking, it is so important to let employees know that they are valuable.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. I wouldn't, you know, I'm an employer. I have 18 staff members. I wouldn't be here without my employees. You know, obviously, like, I can't do everything and I don't want to do everything. And I'm so happy to have them and I value them so much. And I always tell all of our staff, like, whether you're doing maintenance building or you're cooking our supper or you're counseling our clients, every single one of these people are contributing. And that is the way it is in every employee. And every employer in the province, right? Like, you need to show they matter to you, and you're going to really feel them when they're gone if you don't, right? So I always say, like, if you actually, you know, if you're able to invest a little time and energy into helping them and a little bit of money sometimes to get them to where they need to go, those people are going to come back healthier, stronger. And let me tell you, they're going to be really grateful. And you're going to find that your workforce is going to realize how much you've invested and how much they mean to you. And they're going to work harder for you. And they're not going to take a job for $1 more down the road because you helped them out, right? Yeah. Be all sorts of things. Doesn't have to just be a money amount or a dental plan.
Yeah. We've got Ange chiming in from Regina. Ange, thank you so much for the comment. I need to put a limit on the characters in the chat there. So anyways, I can see the whole thing. You guys can't. Ange says, yes, that happened with me. I was off for a long time, though ended up being on welfare after EI was up and my long-term denied me. But when I returned eventually, other coworkers started to ask how it worked, who to talk to, etc.
Absolutely.
So Claudia chimes in again. Sorry, go ahead. Recovery-informed workplaces. Jacqueline, what is a recovery-informed workplace? Or what should it be? What should it be is a better question.
I think that a recovery-informed workplace is basically the ability to really highlight and emphasize the importance of mental health and addictions within the workplace, and that recovery, is a wonderful place for them to be at. So if they need help, then there's going to be somebody that they could talk to, and services can be provided for them, and that it's an encouraged. It's like an encouragement for them to reach out when they need help, right? I didn't explain that very well, but I think you get what I'm saying. Yeah. And sorry, that was an unscripted. We didn't see that question coming, so that happens here. No, that's okay. But I think that a recovery-informed workplace has a beautiful, because it basically implies that people are going to know that there's options available and that it's encouraged, right? Mm-hmm. We're going to take one more from Double T Ranch. You were expecting the whip there, weren't you? Maybe I could program it somehow so whenever their comment comes up, it just automatically does it. Double T says, creating a support system in people's community is critical.
doing it in a workplace is brilliant. Most of us spend as much time at work as we do at home. Amazing strategy. Hashtag recovery capital.
It is so true. It is so true. People spend 40 to 60 to 80 hours a week in their workplace, right? Mm-hmm. You have friends there, you have supports there. Your employer is obviously a huge part of your life. And it's really important that they know what is available to them, not just through their benefit, within their community at work. Absolutely. Mm-hmm. It takes a community to really to get anything done, right? Raise a kid, any of that, right? So in order to really to get themselves to a position where they're happy and they're healthy and they're able to support other people, it requires that they find that community or create the community.
And that brings something to my mind is the importance of aftercare, is the importance of finding mm-hmm. that community when you get, when you walk out the doors of the treatment center. I think there's a misconception in the powers that be that 28 days should somehow be enough, and after that you're on your own. You hardly stand a chance unless you've got a good place to go when you get out of treatment. The odds are slim, and maybe that's contributing to why the recovery averages are so low.
I think that a lot of people assume, we get a lot of phone calls from they'll say if I drop off my husband, will you cure him? It's like, no, that's not the way it works, right? Yeah. It's like diabetes. It's maintenance, it's medicine, it's, an on-court, it's education on how to do things properly. And it's a willingness. It's a desire to be healthier. So, there is no cure. And so therefore it requires maintenance. And maintenance is meetings, maintenance is recovery, communities. It's finding a way to be healthy in your workplace. There's a lot of people who work on the road and they live in finding fulfillment. And that's why service work keeps people sober. Yeah. You can't just sit on the couch of the program.
They say happiness is a decision, and that might be true, but it's an action word. Okay. I can't just sit on my couch and watch Judge Judy all day and just decide that I'm going to be happy. That's not what they mean when they say happiness is a decision. But I thought it was when I first walked out of the treatment center and people happiness is a decision. I thought I was broken. I didn't understand. I'm like, what the hell are you talking about? I want to kill myself.
Right. No, you're right. It's an action word. It's an action. It requires action. It requires an understanding as education. And I think that's where, you're right. Aftercare is so crucial.
Yeah. We've got another comment coming in from Melanie. Melanie, thank you so much for watching tonight. Melanie says, it's important to have accessible beds when people are willing to change. Capture the momentum. Melanie, you are so right. We are an impulsive bunch as addicts, aren't we? We want what we want right now, and if we can't have it, we're off in the sticks again. So instead of trying to make us not be like that, why don't you accommodate our disability and, give us a hand?
Absolutely.
So what else do we got here? Deanna. I had to use some of my retirement savings for my treatment, but worth every penny. Deanna, I am so happy to hear that you found recovery. Thank you for being here. Thank you for joining the conversation.
Thank you, Deanna.
You know Deanna?
I do. Lovely lady. And you know what? She's right. I mean, what is retirement if you're lost in your addiction? Mm-hmm. What is your savings where you are never going to see it because you're going to drown? Right. Mm-hmm. So at the end of the day, I know the money issue it's a huge barrier for so many people. And that's why I have been advocating through the employers, because the employers oftentimes have the cash flow in order to make that happen right away. But, at the end of the day, I think a lot of people need to just understand it's a treatment that's worthwhile. It's worth that extra penny if you have it. Right. For sure.
Yeah. Okay, well, the comments seem to have slowed down. Is there anything that you would like to leave us with tonight?
I think that one of my biggest issues is just kind of letting people know that we're available and we're accessible. But I also want to just say to people, you don't have to hit rock bottom. you don't have to hit rock bottom before you get help. I think it's important to go ahead and ask the peoples that, you know, are in your circle how you can get help. And oftentimes that includes an employer. So if I have any advice, it's that your is most likely going to be a lot more accommodating than you think they're going to be. They're going to be a lot more understanding than you think they're going to be. And it's in their best interest that you get help as quickly as possible. So they are a resource to you as much as you are. So always, if you get an opportunity to ask for help, just keep in mind that you're lovable. You don't need to be guilt-ridden about this. This is a disease, and that there is help out there, and not to give up. Just don't suffer in silence. Go out and ask somebody in your circle how you can take that first step to recovery.
Awesome. Okay, my friend, we will let you go. Thank you so much for your time, and we will see you again.
Thanks so much, Dan, for having me on. I want to apologize for any delay in the internet because I am rural. So okay. I apologize for that.
It's okay.
This is another thing we can ask our provincial government is when they're going to get better Wi-Fi for all of us rural people. Yeah. For once, the technical issues before the show weren't my fault. It wasn't your fault.
Yeah. Okay, my friend, take care.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for having me on.
There's power in numbers. If you would like to contribute to ending the stigma around emotional pain, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. Follow us on LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram. Like and comment your thoughts on our posts. Let us come together with our lived and living experience as a resource that has the power to engage new thought processes, to promote new ideas, to broaden the spectrum of care, and to show the world that the lie is dead. We do recover, and we're here to show you how. Good night.